you've got one basically Papa Bear in this whole industry who is forging new ground, who has to create new things. And I look at this and I think, I like to apply two things to what's happening right now. And I think we're seeing Zeno's paradox play out with these Bitcoin treasury companies. And what Zeno's paradox is basically you start a meter away from the wall, and every step you take forward, you get 50% closer. But after 1,000 steps, you're that far away from the wall, but you still haven't touched the wall. And I look at this and I think, Michael Saylor he's that far away from the wall. He's a millimeter away from the wall. And so all of these other companies, these Bitcoin treasury companies that are coming to market, it looks like they're making huge gains on Saylor. And, Metaplanet, who we love, Dylan, absolutely a savant. He and Simon are just brilliant, as well as the other Bitcoin treasury companies. But these companies are starting from zero or a meter away from the wall. And so when they take their first step, they're moving half a yard. Whereas when Saylor moves 50% to the wall, he's only moving a millimeter. And so I look at this and think, this is basically the law of exponential, or the problem with exponentials is that they eventually curve out to nothing. It's like an asymptotic curve that will eventually top out. Saylor's just a lot further down there. But what I see playing out at the moment, which is really interesting, and this is, I think, the second act for Saylor. The first act was getting on board the equities market. Now, he is less than a month away, I think, from getting inclusion in the S&P 500. That is going to unlock a whole host of passive flows. I've seen somewhere between $25 billion to $100 billion of passive flows are going to flow into that purchase of that share. That will give that a huge bump up. That should have value accretion. And if that looks like it's going to happen, he will have a whole host of investors front running that. But what no one's really talking about is the second act. What he's setting up is the debt market. And all of those instruments, Strife, Strike, Stride, all of those things that he's basically created, and that we're starting to see some sort of little drops come through in the form of Bitcoin accretion. This is his second act. So Saylor has basically gone through the first S-curve of the equity markets. Every other Bitcoin treasury company is following the same path. And much like Bitcoiners who basically go down the rabbit hole, anyone who's deep down the rabbit hole, like a fisherman sees a fisherman from afar, all Bitcoiners who have gone down that rabbit hole know exactly where we are in that Bitcoin journey by having a brief conversation with someone. These Bitcoin treasury companies are following the exact same path down the equity markets that their local equity markets, Japan, UK, Europe, whatever it might be. And they're copying Saylor's playbook, who has been just absolutely benevolent with giving all of his information away so that other people can follow it. Now, what's interesting is Saylor's gone through the equity market S-curve, and now he's building out the second act, which is the debt market S-curve. And this product that he's building is going to be the flywheel that creates what we're going to see. And what's really interesting to me is you've got the oil market basically gets the price of oil globally gets dictated by the Saudis and OPEC. They're basically the marginal producer which sets the global price of oil. What Saylor's building out, I believe, is with these debt markets is he is going to be the marginal purchaser of Bitcoin, and he is going to set the global price of Bitcoin because he's going to harness the debt markets, convert that into the amount of Bitcoin that's going to be purchased on the day. So what he's building out is just a masterpiece. But for the last 6 months, investors have been sleeping on it, probably disappointed with the share price, but I think we're going to see something very special come to fruition in the next sort of 3 to 6 months.
Do you think that there are what other tools or I guess products, like what else is up his sleeve, do you think, when, like you said, you were referring to this second act that's coming? What other things, I guess, I don't know any other way to say it other than just, what else does he have up his sleeve in that sense? And like, I'd love for you to extrapolate more on him really kind of setting the market. Like, will he ever be big enough to really kind of be setting that market and really affecting, obviously, the price made at the margin. So I would love for you to kind of touch on that more, of how he really could be swinging or kind of affecting what's happening at the margins for the price of Bitcoin itself.
I think he will. And I think we saw Metaplanet announce that they reached 10,000 Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and everyone's cheering, and I'm fully supportive of the Metaplanet team. I love that company. I've invested money in it. I think they're brilliant. But Saylor comes out within 12 hours of that announcement and announces he's bought more than that entire company holds in a single day. So, I mean, we just need to look at
Wild.
relativity here. What Metaplanet's done is unbelievable. They're on trajectory to achieve what MicroStrategy has done faster, but they're going to come up to the law of diminishing returns, where as they approach what Saylor's achieved, it's going to get harder and harder and harder for them to achieve it. And this is where I look at this and think the debt markets are the unlock that we need. And Saylor is going to get help from all these companies globally. These Bitcoin treasury companies are actually a help, not a hindrance to it, because what they're providing is they're liquidity sinks for Bitcoin. They're going to be stores of Bitcoin for long term that can never sell their Bitcoin. If they want to be successful Bitcoin treasury companies, they cannot sell their Bitcoin. And so all of a sudden you've got 600,000 coins with MicroStrategy or strategy. You're going to have probably 200,000 to 500,000 coins with Metaplanet. You'll have the Smart Web company or whoever the UK anointed one is, they'll have 500,000. All of a sudden there's 70 stock markets globally. They'll all have their anointed one. And then they're going to have their Pepsi, runner-up, who is the competitor to the big one. And all of a sudden you've got 70 equity markets that are all sucking in Bitcoin, and they're liquidity tanks for Bitcoin that will never see that Bitcoin on the market again. They're not going to be selling. You'll be selling stock, but they're not going to be selling your Bitcoin. They're going to hold it. So I look at this and think this is actually the catalyst for some of the things that we've talked about previously that really is like the foundations for an exponential growth in Bitcoin. And I look at what's happening with all of these liquidity sinks in Bitcoin. The Bitcoin treasury companies are a benefit to Bitcoin, not a hindrance to it. And I look at it much the way bamboo grows. I'm not sure if you're familiar how that stuff works.
A little bit. Not too familiar, though.
What's really odd about bamboo is it takes a long time for this to incubate. It might take up to 2 years, give or take. Some botanist out there will tell me what the actual numbers are, but relative. It takes 2 years to incubate, and it might grow a foot in 2 years. And then in the space of 6 months, it will grow 10 feet. And I look at that, I think, this is what we're seeing now. These Bitcoin treasury companies are liquidity sinks that are going to take in and absorb all the available Bitcoin. When that runs out, because we're coming up against absolute digital scarcity, when that runs out, we then see the price shoot vertical over a very short period of time, because we know these people aren't selling. Everyone who has sold will sell. And the most important thing is they're not going to be selling. And most importantly, you're going to have liquidity providers, loan products, and the rest of it that will enable you not to sell your Bitcoin, so no one will have to sell it. So you'll then be reliant on what is the available Bitcoin minted on the date of purchase. And that's going to be, I guess, a severe competition from all of the Bitcoin treasury companies and all of the long-term hodlers and dollar cost averages out there with Bitcoin.
So we touched on, we mentioned the, alt season, we saw like the ICOs in 2017, then we saw the NFTs in 2020-ish. And then we had the meme coin season that came and went, like all those alt cycles, I guess we'll call them, like just are exponentially shorter and shorter. And that's what the meme season was. I don't even know, a couple months or whatever it was, and a lot of that, again, it kind of looks like it ran right up into the MicroStrategy trade, which was based at the end of last year, right? Like the meme season was there and then it was gone. And then all of a sudden here we are into, strategy and all these treasury companies. Is that just, are we going to see more alts popping up over time? So when you say, hey, we're done with this and the speculation is over here in these treasury companies, I'd love for you to unpack that and just how does that going to affect? I mean, that's obviously, it's got to be a great boon for Bitcoiners, people who hold Bitcoin, people who like sound money, like all that attention and energy and capital is now coming to this space. It looks like it, feels like it, smells like it, quacks like it. So it must be, right?
I couldn't agree more. And this is where I'm so glad I don't hold any altcoins whatsoever, because I would be so disappointed and scared that the alt season is not coming. And probably the greatest admission that we've seen the alt season is questionable.
If you like that clip, then you definitely got to check out this next spicy clip. I think you're really going to like it. Come on, check it out. But if you want the full version, the full interview, then check that out over here. Come on, do it. I'll see you in there.